Okay, let's unpack this. We are about to go on a deep dive today, and it's not into historical documents or, economic forecasts. We're looking at three deeply personal chronicles. These are essentially the life contracts of a giant, a cat burglar, and an interrogator. So what we're really examining are three individuals whose external power, and that could be physical force, professional stealth, or intellectual superiority,
Hmm.
it just masks this enormous internal vulnerability and some really intense, fragile emotional stakes.
It's what makes them so fascinating. These aren't just, stories about jobs or missions. If you look closely, they're really forensic analyses of motivation. The contracts they take on, the gas they set for themselves, they reveal absolutely everything about who they truly are. And more importantly, the price they're willing to pay for what they believe in. These missions, they're basically mirrors.
They really are. And so our mission here is to analyze these source materials to really get into the motivations, the emotional stakes for Tibbs, Tullina, and Niles. I think we have to focus on that powerful disconnect, the disconnect between the public personas they project and their intensely personal, often self-sacrificing internal drives.
And when you lay their choices side by side, a really clear through line starts to emerge. It's this desperate need for security. Tibbs, his massive financial sacrifice, that's for his loved one's physical security. Plain and simple. Tolina's painful emotional break, well, that's a really costly path to her own kind of social and emotional security. And then there's Niles. His destructive pursuit of truth is driven by just a desperate need for intellectual security. He has to live inside his own meticulously constructed worldview, that need for control, for certainty. That's the anchor connecting all three of them.
A perfect way to frame it. So let's start with the most, I guess, physical embodiment of power and loyalty. Let's start with Tibbs the giant and really examine the immense, almost illogical cost of his paternal drive. The first thing you notice about Tibbs is this immediate, almost heartwarming contradiction. He's introduced purely in terms of his physical presence. He's the guy you hire when you need sheer mass. He even talks about his big sausage fingers, and he notes that he's not the quietest little sneak.
Yeah.
He's a force of nature built for something heavy. He is power just made manifest, but his internal narrative, that's anything but confidence.
That's the tension, right? That's what we needed to focus on. His exterior just screams confidence.
Yeah.
But the source material, it gives us his internal monologue right before a job. And he's thinking, always get butterflies before a job. Come on, Gil, you've got this. Easy as. Easy as. Now, that is not the casual bravado of some hardened veteran.
Not at all.
No, it's deep anxiety. It's the voice of someone striving desperately to master their own immense power, to keep it contained, to keep it useful, because the consequences of failure are just too high for him to contemplate. He's not, casually wielding his strength. He's governing it.
And his history really explains why. It explains why his physical identity is both his greatest tool and, at the same time, this huge psychological burden. His origin story is pure circumstance. He has this massive growth spurt. He's taller than most adults by the time he's 13, and boom, he's instantly recruited into a circus, a troupe, as the strongman. His contract with the world, his entire identity became his sheer size.
Right. But the moment his life really gains meaning isn't through that strength. It's the complete opposite. It's through vulnerability, specifically the arrival of Opal, a baby girl just left for the troop leader, and she's basically adopted by the whole community. And the source text, it really emphasizes her unique traits. It talks about her bright red eyes, her pale skin and whitest hair. So she's visually striking, which means she's instantly noticeable.
And instantly set apart.
Exactly. Set apart from the crowd, which, as we'll see, is incredibly dangerous.
So what happens when this man of pure physical force encounters this fragile, pure life? He develops this profound, self-defining paternal drive. It completely reorients him. He tells us by the time she was about 7, I'd grown quite attached to her and she to me. And then he makes this explicit internal declaration. He says he loved her like she was my own daughter. So the deepest pain of his forced exile isn't his own deprivation. It's the agony of not knowing what has happened to her.
And this is so critical to understanding the contract he takes, because the stakes are immediately elevated because of the specific unique traits you mentioned. We learned that the Templars, this powerful, omnipresent faction, they're notorious for their fear of deviation. They need absolute orthodoxy, absolute control over unique lineages or powers. And they took specific interest in Opal because of those features.
So the stakes just rocket from personal worry to systemic danger. Her features weren't just unique, they literally made her a Templar target. And the fact that she dropped off the map before they could get to her, which Tibbs credits to her good instincts, It just solidifies that the danger isn't theoretical, it's existential. She's currently living on the fringes with some old troop members, and that low-level insecure status just confirms the immediate necessity of his intervention.
Which brings us to the absolute core of his sacrifice, the anti-heist.
Mm.
I mean, it's a revolutionary concept. A conventional heist, you're seeking gain through theft. Tibbs is breaking in, not to take wealth, but to leave his entire life's accumulation of it for Opal. He's squirreling it away in a secured vault under a pseudonym. He has completely redefined the genre of crime from acquisition to pure benevolence.
And let's just talk for a second about the sheer mechanical effort involved in this exchange.
Yeah.
Tibbs is not a thief, right? He's a strong man. His ability to execute some delicate, covert operation is inherently limited by his massive size and his hands, those sausage fingers he talks about. So he has to use every single ounce of his learned discipline to execute an operation that demands quiet precision. And it's all for the purpose of loss, of giving everything away.
And that loss is just monumental. The immediate tangible consequence of this mission is the complete depletion of his life savings. The text is very clear. Damn near everything I've earned.
Yeah.
We were talking about years, maybe decades, of hard, dangerous, strongman work. All of it is being traded for one single outcome, ensuring Opal never has to put herself at risk to work or eat.
He is literally trading his future financial security, his future comfort, everything, for her immediate material and physical safety. He intentionally disempowers himself financially just to empower her. So how does a person process that kind of, devastating financial reversal?
He processes it by focusing entirely on the emotional payoff. He just shifts the valuation metrics completely. The internal realization is just relief. And this sense of profound purpose. He thinks, I know I'm a lot poorer than I was a few days ago, but I feel like I've done some real good. And can say, he has literally replaced financial wealth with moral wealth.
And the final piece of that internal puzzle is his belief in her potential, in her future. He says, Opal's a smart kid. She'll put that money to good use. Better than I would anyway. Now, that's not just a passing comment, is it? It's the ultimate transfer of power and responsibility. He sees his money not as a means for his own personal survival, which he has explicitly discarded, but as fertile ground, a protective shield for her to grow safely and realize her own potential.
Yeah, that's exactly it. For Tibbs, this immense contract of self-sacrifice wasn't really a cost in the end. It was the highest possible fulfillment of his paternal identity. He chose the pain of poverty for himself over the pain of even potential danger for her. It is just a stunning example of physical strength being entirely secondary to a profound, unwavering emotional loyalty.
Well, that sets a pretty high bar for self-sacrifice. If Tibbs secured his loved one by giving up his fortune, let's transition now to Tullina, the cat burglar. She secures her independence by giving up her dream. So we're shifting from a physical cost to a purely emotional cost as the price of security.
And Tullina is, in so many ways, Tibbs' antithesis when it comes to professional control. Tibbs is battling this internal anxiety, right? Tullina imposes absolute external boundaries. Her introduction is this powerful statement of rigid identity. She says, not Tully, not Lena, not Lynn, not even T. Tullina got it. Good. She's there to make bank, not friends. This ironclad professionalism, it's like armor. And it feels like armor that was forged from some implied past betrayal. It's designed to make sure no one can get close enough to hurt her or compromise a job.
Her entire operating system is built on self-reliance and distance. And that is precisely why the mission we're about to discuss forces this almost unbearable internal conflict. She has to violate her sacrosanct rule, which is, I don't ask for help.
And you can hear the immense psychological cost of that required vulnerability. The internal tension just erupts in her dialogue. She literally struggles to form the sentence. She says, why is this so hard? I need your help. There, I said it. That struggle, the inability to say the words without this palpable effort, it reveals just how deeply rooted her independent, guarded persona is. Admitting she needs help is, for her, an emotional loss of control equivalent to Tibbs losing his entire fortune.
So what is this mission that forces her to break her cardinal rule? The object of her quest is highly symbolic, Lady Mervale's wedding dress. And this isn't just about fashion, it's a quest for total social legitimacy. Her romantic history, it confirms this drive. She was involved with a man named Julius Farrow, a nobleman from a very good family. But the relationship was constantly strained because his family, the nobility, they saw her as uncouth. She was never deemed worthy of his world.
And the marriage proposal happened just before her exile, so it froze that fantasy in time. She's been chasing that idealized moment ever since, desperate to step into that other life. The stakes for her are total self-reinvention. She believes that simply taking his name would wash clean my past. It would just excise the memory of her life as a cat burglar. So the dress, it represents the external validation and the clean social slate she craves. It's the ultimate shield against the judgment of society.
Let's delve into the symbolic weight of the dress itself for a moment. It's magnificent. It was worn by Lady Mervale when she married Duresso. It was such a spectacle, it required 6 people to carry the train. It's described as embodying the most beautiful visage. So it's not just a dress, it's a piece of history, it's a piece of undeniable aristocratic power. Acquiring it, for a moment, cements her fantasy of becoming Lady Pharaoh, a woman defined by tradition and status, not by shadows and stealth.
And when she successfully acquires it, the immediate, visceral consequence is this powerful affirmation of that dream. She notes, "The Lady Mervale's dress is even more beautiful than I'd imagined. It's held up well over the years and fits nearly perfectly."
That nearly perfectly fit. That's the final piece of the puzzle for her. It's the external world conforming to her internal fantasy.
Right. And this satisfaction, this momentary lowering of the guard, it prompts a really rare gesture from her toward the listener. She says, "I'll add you to our invitees, no plus ones."
It's this fleeting moment where her armor cracks, and it's fueled by the conviction that the dream is finally within her reach. She's inviting someone into her most prized, most secret fantasy.
But as we know, these idealized dreams, they rarely survive contact with the harsh reality she tried so desperately to escape. The transition to what the sources call the painful decision of disengagement is immediate. Her internal conflict is just raw and rapid. She tries to deny it. "I'm fine, I don't need your help," but the facade just collapses instantly into the truth. "Wait, I do need your help." This instantaneous mental ping pong, it just shows the extreme emotional strain she's under.
She understands that she has to face reality. The intelligence she receives confirms the relationship is fundamentally unsustainable. Julius Pharaoh, her fiancé, he's remained faithful, but he's unhappy, and he might even be detained or locked up. A clear attempt by his family to draw her out of hiding and force a confrontation that would compromise her freedom or his safety or both. The impossible choice is laid bare. The cost of his name is just too high for both of them.
So she executes the ultimate emotional sacrifice. She decides she has to return the engagement ring, the most material, the most binding representation of their shared dream. And the depth of her grief and emotional exhaustion is really signified by her profound inability to bear doing it herself. She says, "I cannot bear to do it myself." She has to delegate the death of her own dream because she can't witness the final blow.
What's so fascinating is Julius Pharaoh's reaction. There's no shock, there's no anger, just this resigned pain. He hears the news and he just says, "Oh no, tell her I understand and I'm sorry."
It's heartbreaking.
It is. It confirms the shared sorrow and the mutual necessity of the breakup. The source text confirms the cold logic here. It isn't fair to either of us to keep chasing this dream. They both recognize that the pursuit of external security through marriage was actively destroying their personal safety.
And the immediate aftermath is where Tullina reclaims herself. She feels absolutely awful, actually, but I also feel lighter. The tension of chasing that impossible dream, the cognitive dissonance of desiring freedom while craving submission to these social rules has been released. The emotional cost was necessary for her own mental stability.
And the self-soothing projection she engages in is so key to her moving forward. She assures herself of Julius's future happiness. She imagines he will fall in love, he will propose to her, she will be delighted, they will marry and start a family, and they will have their happy ending. This projection, it's a psychological mechanism for her. It's how she justifies the severity of her emotional choice. It ensures that the pain was productive, that it saved him from a miserable future with her.
But the final, and I think most defiant act, is the reclamation of the dress. She doesn't return the magnificent garment. She keeps it. She says, "Lady Mervale's. That's mine now." And in that moment, the symbol fundamentally shifts. It began as a symbol of desired legitimacy, right? A passport to a clean slate via marriage. It ends as a symbol of her achieved, difficult independence, something she earned through her own painful, necessary choice. She found her own legitimacy not through a husband's name, but through her hard-won freedom.
A truly masterful analysis of how external ambition and social craving were ultimately defeated by internal necessity. Okay, so now let's pivot entirely. Let's move from the emotional contracts of loyalty and love to the intellectual, philosophical prison built by Niles, the interrogator.
Right. With Niles, we're moving from the volatility of emotion to the rigidity of philosophy. He's not driven by love or money, but by this desperate, almost pathological need for intellectual control. He introduces himself as the resident thought extractor and immediately establishes this dynamic of perceived superiority. He assesses the listener's competence based on whether he remembers them. If he doesn't, it means they broke easily.
His whole world is built on a foundation of just intense cynicism and nihilism. For Niles, almost everything that gives life meaning to other people is just a scam. It's a tool used to control the populace. He throws it all out. Innocence, sin, the official Templar faith, the gods worshipped by the Karui and Mariketh peoples. To him, it's all a convenient belief system to keep the rabble in check. He sees himself as the sole rational figure who's privy to the true mechanics of power.
And his approach to faith, which is illustrated by an anecdote he shares, is deeply aggressive. He describes confronting a Karui who told him that their god, Tukohama, cut another god, Kitava's face. And when Niles pressed the Karui on empirical knowledge, how do you know if you weren't there? The response was violence, a stabbing. This visceral story really highlights Niles's view that faith, when it's challenged by logic, immediately resorts to primitive aggressive violence to protect its narrative.
His entire methodology is designed to rationalize away the miraculous. He's trying to force any cosmic event or spiritual experience into a mundane empirical box. And we see this forensic attempt to dismantle reality when he addresses the listener's reported experience of slaying a god.
And becomes a systematic debunking machine. He's just reducing the sublime to the pedestrian using these environmental and artisan theories, the massive footprints supposedly left by the god. He dismisses them as clearly fake, carved by Templar artisans to deceive the populace and to reinforce their own authority.
Right.
And the river of blood. Simply diluted crimson mud from the plains of Vestiri. He doesn't just deny the miracle. He supplies a detailed, rational explanation for the illusion, placing the deceit squarely on the shoulders of human manipulators.
And when he's dealing with something as abstract as a personal spiritual experience, he dismisses it entirely as environmental contamination. He cites these detailed, really bizarre records of gases seeping from ancient crypts that once caused an entire village to believe they were, of all things, fish, flopping on the ground and dying in the process.
And he asks the listener, he asks you, if you considered you might be a victim of a similar occurrence. This is his ultimate defensive mechanism. He will always find a toxicological or geological explanation before he will accept the supernatural. Because accepting the supernatural would completely shatter his self-constructed reality. His refusal to accept evidence that goes against his thesis is absolute.
But even this ironclad facade of certainty, it develops cracks. And they appear not when he interrogates the weak, but when he encounters the sheer terror of a high-ranking official. This is a rare, absolutely vital insight into Niles's hidden vulnerability.
He somehow managed to access a stray thought from High Templar Venarius. Something that was only possible because of Venarius's overwhelming fear at that moment. And the vision Niles sees, this image of cosmic horror, is a single beleaguered jewel adrift on an ocean of madness.
And Niles, the supreme intellectual, he immediately labels Venarius insane. He's desperately clinging to his position of superiority, but this judgment is purely a self-defense mechanism because he immediately admits that the image is so terrifying that believing in gods would almost be a comfort.
And this is the moment. This is the moment his absolute certainty wavers. If gods existed, at least there would be somebody who could stand against the tide, against that overwhelming, non-rational ocean of madness. His cynical nihilism, in that brief instant, is exposed. It's not intellectual strength. It's a desperately frightening position that he needs to protect at all costs.
And this hidden fear is what drives his explicit mission. He seeks to destroy faith through his own version of empirical evidence. He declares his goal is to prove that gods do not exist and to expose the elaborate facade built by the deceivers. He pursues this device, the thought extractor, specifically for forced confessions. He believes that logic, applied through technology, will provide the objective truth that saves him from mysticism.
So let's detail the failure of this technological solution. The thought extractor, presumably a machine designed to pull unvarnished truths directly from the psyche, was supposed to identify the architects of the divine lie. Instead, after testing the device, he finds that random people truly believe divinity is real.
The machine, which was designed to extract truth, ironically proved the depth of the belief, not the identity of the deceivers. He was looking for a conspiracy, and instead he found genuine conviction. So he deems the thought extractor useless because it confirmed the false narrative he was trying to destroy. His experiment failed because he had already defined the only result he was willing to accept.
Right. So facing the failure of direct interrogation, he shifts strategies to what he calls a mundane sample. He focuses on a physical, ancient object, the Asmeri artifact known as Reedy's finger, which supposedly causes enormous plants to grow instantaneously. He targets this specifically to prove that it's a fake, and to expose the Asmeri, who were the original inhabitants of the land, for the liars and mystics he perceives them to be.
He even grimly notes the grotesque myths surrounding its use, the ritual sacrifice of a baby to fuel the growth. It just emphasizes the primitive irrationality that he believes he's fighting. This artifact is his final empirical challenge.
But once again, the empirical method spectacularly betrays his philosophical certainty. He runs the test. The artifact works. The result is undeniable. Verdi's finger did indeed cause enormous plants to grow.
And the immediate consequence is just total, instant self-deception. Instead of accepting the reality of the artifact, Niles doubles down on denial with ferocious speed. He claims they've fallen into one of their traps. He refuses the data and instantly generates these alternative, rational theories to protect his core worldview. It must be an unknown species of plant, or maybe a hypnotizer, or even an illusion machine.
This is the critical moment. The man who champions empirical truth is now actively destroying evidence because it contradicts his philosophy. His pursuit of absolute truth ends in the highest irony, an anti-intellectual act of censorship.
The artifact, because it's too dangerous to his worldview, must be destroyed. I shall destroy it, he says, so that no one else will ever be fooled by it again. He chooses maintain certainty over objective, empirical discovery. Niles is willing to sacrifice the truth itself just to keep the walls of his philosophical prison intact.
And that, in itself, reveals his vulnerability. He is the ultimate skeptic who cannot bear the idea of a reality that functions outside his ability to categorize and control it.
What a convergence of deeply complex internal contracts. We've examined three intelligent people all navigating these volatile worlds, yet their defining actions were driven by profoundly personal and often non-rational forces.
Absolutely. If we review the arc, the core tension in each life reveals the price of security. Tibbs used his immense power for selfless loyalty. He traded his entire fortune to ensure his adopted daughter's security. Tullina used her stealth and ambition for self-definition, and she paid that high emotional cost of shedding her idealized relationship to secure her own independence. And Niles? Well, Niles used rationality to construct a philosophical prison, ending in an act of profound denial just to secure his intellectual certainty.
The so what here, I think, is that the purity of their motivations is what drove their greatest costs. Tibbs's pure love cost him his fortune. Tullina's pure desire for legitimacy cost her her emotional peace. And Niles's pure fear of cosmic chaos cost him the very empirical truth he claimed to pursue.
They all acted as analysts in their own way, didn't they? Tibbs was analyzing physical threat, Tullina was analyzing social threat, and Niles was analyzing philosophical threat. Yet the strongest force driving their decisions was always the least rational one: loyalty, desire, and fear.
And here's where it gets really interesting for you, for the learner. These deep dives, they show that the most complicated contracts are always the ones written in blood, tears, or absolute denial. The lesson, I think, is that knowing what you want to be true can often override what you know to be empirically true.
We saw Tibbs secure Opal's future by giving up everything, and Tullina secure her freedom by giving up her dream. But the question that's just hanging over Niles is deeply provocative. He sacrificed the objective truth of Reedy's finger to maintain his absolute belief that he is right. So if he succeeds in censoring that one small piece of evidence, what happens when he inevitably encounters an even greater piece of reality he cannot rationalize away? Something that confirms the existence of that ocean of madness he saw in Venarius's fear. Will he try to destroy the whole world to maintain his absolute belief in his own certainty? That need for intellectual control, when it's taken to its absolute extreme, it becomes the greatest threat of all.